Shabbat Shalom. When I was very young, my family had a family friend in Jerusalem who was a Rebbitzin. She was a very well-known Rebbitzin, and she was a teacher and very wise. And she had quite the presence. We all looked up to her. And I remember that when you visited her, you had this sense of awe a little bit, like this is someone special. And that she was a little bit apart from everybody else. She both was apart, and yet she had unconditional love, it felt like, for everyone. She was totally open. And so our parsha this week introduces the concept in the Torah of the Nazir. The Nazir, of whom Samson is the most well-known example, was a commandment where a person in biblical times would make a vow, and the vow would be not to drink wine or other grape products or to cut their hair for a certain amount of time. For that time, they were to be completely dedicated to God. They're supposed to be doing a different kind of life. And they say even if a family member passed away during the time of that vow, they were supposed to wait until the end of the vow to go be in the presence of the body of their deceased family member. And so it's when the Torah introduces this commandment, it has this little play on the words. Anyway, it's ki yipaleh lindor neder nazir lahazir. Twice, two words repeat itself. When the Torah does that, it means that it takes it very seriously. So the word for making a vow, it's when you really make a vow. When you make this vow, you can't go back on this one. And then the word for nazir, it's a verb, so it's a verb. It's not you are nazir, but you're nazirified, so to speak. So what does it mean to be nazirified? So Rashi, the French commentator, he looks into the origin of the word. And he says there's one other place in the Torah where you find this word. And it's when they're talking to the priest and they're saying, you have to be separate. When you're the priest for impurity, they have to be separate from all the stuff going on in the tabernacle. And so he says the word Nazir itself means to, in the translation of the Old French, to keep aloof. You're supposed to keep aloof. And he says because there's no aloofness without separation. He says the Nazir had to keep himself or herself aloof from wine mainly, but also in general. For that small period, right? It was only a month, for less than that. For that period, aloof from some of the regular things of mundane life, and that we all get caught up and to take us away from what we really are trying to do with our lives, to keep us away from being focused and dedicated and all those things. And so when we think of the word aloof itself, we think separate, we think distant, we think negative, we think haughty. But so much of the religion of the Torah was about this kind of separation. When we say Havdalah, what's the blessing we say Havdalah? We say, blessed are you, Lord our God, who separates between the holy and the mundane, between Shabbat and the 6 days of creation, between light and darkness. And even the way all of the biblical Bible, the tabernacle and the temple was set up. There was a courtyard, and an inner courtyard, and the inner of the temple, and the Holy of Holies. Every one was a little bit separate from the other. Each section was kept separate and aloof from the other section. And so it wasn't that they wanted people to be separate from each other, but rather that to find dedication, to find focus, to find one-pointedness, to find depth, to feel wisdom, sometimes you have to be mindful about where your heart and your mind is at, right? And so I think for all of us, if you want to find real rest in your life, you have to keep yourself aloof from your phones, at least a little bit. And if you want to enjoy proper family life, you need to find times where you're aloof from your work. And if you want to spend quality time with your spouse, you have to keep aloof from all of the other junk in your own mind. And so sometimes to find out more about who we are and what our lives are about, we have to carve out a little piece of time in our lives to stop and think, well, what is it all about? What am I doing here? And be aloof from the mundane in our lives and dedicate a few days just to try and figure out where do I want to go from here? And this is what this ancient Nazirite vow is about. The teaching of the Nazirite vow. To find deep wisdom and peace, sometimes you go beyond the regular rhythms of life. And then you find something more precious than ever. Shabbat Shalom.